I love that we're reading this part. This is the top of page 404. The law can know no condition as such. It knows form, but not size. Outline is real, but limitation is unreal in consciousness, right? So in the absolute, nothing depends on anything else. Only the idea, like the pattern, the divine pattern. So let's say you have a divine pattern for a lady's dress. You can be like Eiley, my granddaughter, who made a dress about this big for her brand new little doll, right? Or you go to the store and you buy a dress that's made for an adult woman. The idea of dress is exactly the same. The form, but the size is immaterial. A dress can be big for a person or little for a doll. And in the law, the same thing is true. It knows form, but no size. In the absolute, nothing depends on anything but ideas. Ideas are form, condition, cause and effect, and everything that happens between cause and effect, but not the effect itself. This is what a treatment does, reminds us of the form. And of course, in the universe, the law doesn't know big or little, doesn't know the difference between $100 and $10,000, doesn't know the difference between a little love or a lot of love. It doesn't have any withhold. You say, I want inner peace. The universe doesn't have any withhold about the amount of inner peace that you can have. You can have as much of inner peace as you can imagine and accept and participate in. The size is not limited by the law. And so in the next paragraph, I love this. Fear is the great enemy. Fear is the great enemy of each one of us. Fear is a mental attitude, and as such can be converted into something else. Fear is the reverse mental attitude to faith. Actually, I love what Ernest Holmes says elsewhere in the textbook. He says, you actually have all the faith you need. Normally what you do is have faith in negativity, and you have faith that something bad is going to happen. That's what fear is. The faith that it's not going to work out. The faith that it never works out for you. The faith that something always goes wrong. Right? That's what fear is. It is simply having faith in it not working as opposed to in it working. Fear brings limitation and lack in its wake and destroys the happiness and possibility of a greater degree of livingness to all of us who suffer from it. Right? Fear constricts. And if you want to know whether what is moving through your consciousness is intuition or is the impulse of the universe or it's fear, the answer is always, does it feel expanding or contracting? If it feels expanding, even if it's uncomfortable and a little like you want me to do what? Oh my God, and we call that fear. But what we're doing is being expanded into something beyond our comfort zone. Whereas when we're feeling constricted, that fear is creating limitation and lack and causing us to shut down, right? And those are two very different things. Fear, this is the beginning of the next paragraph, blocks the more complete givingness of spirit to its highest form of manifestation on this planet, which is us. Fear arises from that mental attitude which limits the possibility and the willingness of spirit to give us the good we so greatly desire, right? So instead of having faith that the law is going to manifest it for us, we have faith that it's not going to. And we call that fear. We're afraid it's not going to. There's nothing wrong in the desire for self-expression. There's nothing wrong with that, right? We're not Buddhists. So we're not afraid of the word desire, and we recognize that our truest desires, our deepest desires, are life seeking to express itself through us. Now, this is very different than the desires for acquisition, or the addiction to food, or the addiction, right? That is not desire. That's a belief that we need something to make us happy. A desire is the desire for a full life, a desire for expression, a desire to live the life of our dreams. That is the impulse of the universe itself. And when we're afraid, right, we're constricting it, and then it can't get in. The universe can't get in, and it can't give us that which we are seeking to experience. Fear, and this is the next paragraph. I love these paragraphs about fear. If you ever find yourself really confronted with fear, go back to page 404 and 405 in the general summary and remind yourself what fear is and what it's actually doing. Fear is a belief in limitation, a denial that the divine is the creator and the source of all good. All right? That's what fear is. It simply blocks us, cuts us off from our understanding that, no, the universe is for us, and that the law is seeking to express, to bring us that which we want to express. And our fear cuts us off from that. We must do all in our power to overcome it. Perfect love casts out fear, that is confidence, overcomes the depression of doubt, right? So when we love the law and we love our spiritual practice and we love the thing that we are seeking to express, that simply overcomes any sense of fear or limitation. Mental depression can produce physical and financial depression. And that becomes then a psychological cycle because we just keep reinforcing that which we are afraid of. To overcome fear is the greatest adventure of our consciousness. To overcome fear, right? It is the greatest adventure of our consciousness. And to really confront that, because fear is simply it's as it says here, the outpicturing of all the ways that we don't believe that the universe's teleology, that means its directionality, is for good, which basically means it's always for life, for the expression of life. There's nothing in the universe that says, well, I don't know, they get good, but you don't. For whatever reason, any reason. There's nothing in the universe that is withholding good. Lots of things can stand in the way of that good. Our own consciousness, the collective consciousness of a nation or a group of people, the collective consciousness of humanity as a whole. But nothing in the universe is standing in the way of our good. When we fear that that's not true. And we're afraid that something in the universe is standing between us and our good. That we don't deserve it, that we shouldn't have it, that there's something wrong with us, that it simply is impossible, that it's too big, whatever it is. So what do we do, right? What do we do with fear? This is the next piece. What do we do? We should contact a larger field of faith. That means we have to grow our understanding and belief in how the universe operates, in what's going on and how it works. This is done by understanding that God, Spirit, the universe, is the great giver and sustainer of life and expression. God is all there is. God is substance and supply. We must learn to accept it. And of course, the greatest teacher in the Western canon of spirituality says, it is the Father's good pleasure to give us the kingdom. Nothing is withheld. Nothing is withheld. I mean, what an amazing concept. That and for me, the way that I look at this and the way that I've come to believe it is I just look at nature. Right? I just look at nature. So right now, we have a lot of birds that are bird feeders, and we are feeding them mealworms, because they all have babies. And it's so fun to see them come and chomp down those worms because they're taking them to the babies. Pretty soon, we'll start seeing the babies at the bird feeders. It's really cool. And there is nothing in the laws of nature that says, I'm going to withhold what you need. I'm going to keep you from having it to the birds. There's nothing in nature that says to the flowers, you're not good enough, so I'm not going to give you rain. I'm sorry, there's something wrong with you, so I'm not going to allow you to pull good nutrition out of the soil. Do you see? I mean, and that's what that means. The statement means it rains on the just and the unjust. That's what that means. The lilies of the field, they don't have to clothe themselves. They have everything they need. So we just have to look in nature. And ultimately, without human interference, of course, because we can absolutely make a difference, good or bad, nature, even in its cycles, is for life. Even volcanoes and floods are all part of the cycle, which ultimately are creating more life, more good. There's nothing in the laws of nature that is having an opinion. And so when we can see that in the universe, in the physical universe, right, we can then apply that to ourselves and recognize that this thing, which we call God or universal spirit, it has no withhold. It has no withhold. It just reflects back to us the consciousness with which we are moving in the world. That's all it's doing, is reflecting it back to us. And so if we're moving in the world with fear, then that constriction gets reflected back to us. We're afraid it's not going to work out. Gosh, why are we surprised that it more often doesn't work out than it does? On the other hand, when we assume things generally work out, why are we surprised when they generally work out? And only occasionally does it not work out for whatever reason, right? It's not 100% guarantee. Life still happens. We're still engaged with other people and other things and stuff's going on. But in general, right, that's what happens when we can shift our consciousness to an understanding of reality. I'm not personally big on the word faith. I think faith has a lot of spiritual baggage, religious baggage. Maybe it works great for you. That's great. I like the word trust. I trust the laws. I trust the universe. I trust that it works the way that it works. I don't need to have faith that somehow God is going to favor me for some reason, right? I'm simply trusting in the way the universe works. I'm trusting in the creative process, and I'm trusting in how that unfolds. And so I like to think of it as moving from fear to trust, fear to faith. But you know, it's good to think about how we use these words and which words mean something to us. All right, so, and of course the next paragraph says this: the Spirit has not withheld good from us, but ignorance of the true law of supply has caused us to have fear. Oh, that's basically what I just said. Okay, now we're going to stop there because the next couple paragraphs are really powerful and I don't want to dilute them. So we're going to stop there and talk about fear. 1, how has fear constricted your life? 2, what have you done to overcome it? Have you done something to overcome it? Or is there a way that we can support you in overcoming fear that is holding you back? So these are the questions that I propose to you. So we're going to invite you to engage in the conversation. Talk about fear, share a story, ask a question, provide a comment. How is fear operating in your life? Or how have you overcome it? So we have Joseph here behind the microphone, and he is going to bring you in the Zoom room. You can either chat in the Zoom room, and he'll read a comment out. He will bring you in if you raise your hand and say you want to have a comment. And then, of course, people in the room. If you have something you want to say or share, then Joseph or Richard will bring you a microphone. So let's check. What is it that we want to talk about this conversation about fear? So anybody in the room, anybody out there in Zoom land have something that wants to be shared? You know that what Ryan would say, right? This is the awkward silence, waiting for somebody to participate. All right, we have a comment right here.
Good morning.
Good morning.
It's Sunday morning. I'm so happy to be here. And great topic. You know, this is my 3rd year. Today's my anniversary.
Congratulations.
Yay.
3 years at
And it's just
CSLDallas. I love it.
It's just been so awesome. And I tell you, when I look back, fear has always been a part of our lives, but I didn't know how to take care of it. And coming here has given me the tools. And I'm find myself as I grow and go forward and transition, oh my God, the peace. And it's just weird. It's like, okay, what's going on? You know, and then all of a sudden, you know, one of those monster thoughts coming at you, oh no you don't. You go down the river, baby. I don't want you in my life. And I just remember that. And of course, if I'm down a little bit sometimes, I'll put my music on. I love music. And I love to dance, and I love to sing, and that's all part of that product that you put together for yourself.
Yes.
And the tools that we use, and
Yes.
it really makes a difference. It makes like day and night,
Beautiful.
and that's what I wanted to share.
I love
Thank
that,
you.
Julia. Thank you so much. And I loved what you said, right? The opposite of it for you is the experience of peace, because there's not that hyperventilating all the time, that heart isn't pounding all the time, there isn't that constriction and that, oh my God, oh my God, oh my God, right? And so I have to tell you, I love that you said that. So two things. One is when I first started practicing all of this, I believed that if I wasn't afraid or worried, that meant I didn't care. And that is not true. Not being afraid does not mean we don't care. It means that we care from a productive level as opposed to an unproductive level. We care by setting intentions. We care by seeking to move something forward, by doing our spiritual work, by saying, no, I'm not going to let this monster thought take me away. I am going to remember that the universe has my back. The universe is on my side. The universe supports me, right? That is actually caring very much about our lives and about what's going on in them. So that was the first thing I had to confront. The second thing is, I loved what you said. I'm so at peace. This is weird. So we can be very, very, very used to a certain level of stress and fear that has become normalized in our lives. And as it begins to go away, I know for myself, I spent many years recreating experiences so that I could get back to that place of fear, so that I could get back to what I considered was a normal feeling of life. A little tension, a little stress, a little nee about something, right? That's just the way life is. And so my subconscious would over and over create things to bring that level of energetic back into my body, because that's what I was used to. And when I didn't have it, and I didn't have it in my home or in my relationships or work, it felt weird. And so this is so important. Sometimes people will ask me, why do I keep doing this? Why does this keep happening? Well, first of all, why is not a useful question, because we know the answer. Why is because somehow the law of cause and effect is operative. So there's something in my thoughts, feelings, beliefs, attitudes, subjective mind that is continuing to create this experience. Why do I keep doing that? The answer is very simple. Very simple. You know the psychological reasons, you know whatever trauma you have, you've done enough therapy, you know what beliefs are running you, you've done enough spiritual work, you know what tools to use. Why is it continuing to happen? One reason, and why is it continuing to happen? One reason and one reason only. Habit. We're in the habit of feeling a certain way. We're in the habit of that little bit of tension. We're in the habit of always having something not quite right in our lives. We're in the habit of always feeling criticism or criticized. And so we simply continue to create lives that allow us to keep feeling the way that we're in the habit of feeling. Because when we feel at peace and life is going well, it can feel weird. We're not used to it. So what we want to do over and over and over and over and over again, Ernest Holmes uses the term acceptance. Reverend Karen's going to talk about that this Sunday in our Sunday celebration. Accepting our good. just accepting that life is actually unfolding beautifully. We see it every spring. Oh my God, I have amaryllis. They're this big. They're unbelievable. Every spring, they just do their thing. They just do their thing. And the entire system of soil and sun and rain and everything, and the little bit of fertilizer that I've given them, and the extra watering it gets from the watering system, all of that is in service to the good of these amaryllis just growing and producing these amazing blossoms every year, every year. And those blossoms will eventually wilt. I'll cut them off. Eventually the green chlorophyll will be sucked back into the bulbs. Then I'll cut off all the leaves. It'll look dead. It'll look like it's not growing. And next year, there they come again, right? That's what we're trusting. All right, so let's stop and turn and see if there's any other comments in the room. Any comments or raised hands out there on Zoom? And Joseph, I don't know, do we have anybody on Zoom? We have one more comment here in the room as well.
It looks like we have one raised hand
Okay.
from Brenda on Zoom. I'm going to ask her to unmute her mic and join us today.
Good morning, Brenda.
Good morning, Dr. Peterson community. Wow, what a marvelous and right on topic today. I came to CSL very much filled with fear and could not wrap my head around faith. I didn't want to have faith, I wanted to know. And no amount of my brilliant thinking or therapy or various things could get me there. You said, till we accept our good, and that also means allowing receiving. So
Yes.
one of the things in my journey has been the development of trust.
Yes.
Trust in the law, trust in the universe, trust in community, and a trust in myself.
Yes.
And so I was going to talk about this wonderful good feeling that I've encountered, and as you started talking about the topic, tears welled up in me, that I need to be a little honest about a fear going on, that I'm having trouble harmonizing with what I know to be true. I'm in a process of evaluation where I need to give exquisite conscious detail, accounting for all of my activities, limitations, where I need help, what I can't do. After having learned for the last several years to shift and focus on finding the joy and life and engagement in that which I can.
Yeah.
Now I know that I have to just face the fear and buckle down and do the damn evaluations, which I have been in great resistance to. And I know that the wholeness of my spiritual truth is that I can find that joy and engagement regardless of the physical circumstance. So as I'm questioning what this fear is, have I learned enough, grown enough, strong enough to stay anchored in myself or with the role modeling, mentoring, and supportive community that I don't get sucked down the whirlpool of the old habits and can stay on the surface dancing in the sun.
Beautiful. Yeah, Brenda, thank you for sharing that. That is a really powerful dance that we do, the paradox of the human and the spiritual absolute truth, right? And this is where you really, really right at the crux of deep trust as opposed to spiritual bypass or magical thinking. We don't do magical thinking. We don't pretend that what is, isn't. What we recognize is that the spiritual truth is that we are supported to have a whole life regardless of any apparent limitation, regardless of any appearance and condition. So this is particularly important when we are looking at physical limitations. So, for example, I'm 5'9". Interestingly enough, I've been 5'9" since I was 12 years old. So when I was 12, I towered over everybody. And I was very tall. I was the tallest person in my school for 2 years. I played on the boys' basketball team up through junior high because I was so tall. But I was only tall compared to everybody else. And then all the boys shot up. They all got their growth spurt. Actually, the girls got their growth spurts as well. And they all grew up around me. And all of a sudden, I wasn't particularly tall anymore. I was actually sort of average with everybody. And I had an entirely different experience. And so what happened is, one of the things that happened is I was no longer invited to play on the boys' basketball team or the boys' soccer team because I was no longer at an advantage. So I had to deal with that that feeling of limitation, like, oh my God, I used to be able to do something and now I can't. And I had to decide, does that have something to do with who I am? Does that have something to do with my self-esteem? Does that have something to do with my ability to enjoy my life? And this, Brenda, is what you're facing, right? Obviously, your limitations physically are like way, way different. And I don't want to trivialize them in any way, shape, or form. But what we get to see is that the physical condition of our life doesn't have anything to do with our experience of our wholeness and joy. And we find that wholeness and joy expressed then in many different ways. One of the ways we get to express our wholeness and joy is to ask for help, is to ask for people to participate in our lives, is to know that that is an extension of the good in our lives. So another example that we might think about is if you break a leg, you use a crutch. You use a crutch so that you can continue to move around. If you lose a leg, you learn how to either use a wheelchair or a prosthetic. And those things are a part of experiencing more wholeness. And life is different, but it doesn't have to be less whole. So that's the first thing. And this is the work mentally that we do. The second thing is we want to remember that we're not superstitious. So Brenda, you've done a lot of work. A lot of people in the room and online, you've done a lot of work. So when we say we accept what is, right, we just look at it. I have this much money right now. That doesn't mean that I can't enjoy my life. I just have this much money because I'm not going to go into debt and I'm not going to make stupid decisions. I have this much physical ability. And we call in the good. So when you're writing the evaluation, you want to, instead of thinking about, oh my God, there's a limitation, there's a limitation, there's a limitation, there's a limitation, what you get to say is there's an opening for my good, something is going to fill it. There's an opening for my good, something else is going to fill that. There's an opening for my good, something is going to fill it. And so as you're writing this, right, you're seeing all the ways in which you are open to the universe supporting exactly the same way that we do with our finances. I have this much coming in from from what looks like my paycheck, but I know I accept my good. So maybe I can't pay for a trip, but somebody simply gives it to me. Maybe I can't pay for a brand new car, but I find a 2-year-old car that's perfect and right in my budget. And it's exactly what I need and want. Do you see? So the universe doesn't know anything about big or little. It just knows about your wholeness and your joy. And it will do whatever is required for you to have that experience. Our job is to see them as openings and possibilities as opposed to cementing a limitation. So we never have to be afraid of looking at what is. All we're looking at is the facts. What creates the fear is the story that we tell about the fact. The fact is I'm limited here. The story is I'm always going to be limited. It's never going to be good enough. I'm never going to be able to have joy in my life because of this fact. Right? And so we want to we want to really work on not being superstitious and afraid of simply saying what is. And I loved what you said, staying on the surface of that. This is just the fact. This is just the fact. But it has nothing to do with the quality of my life. And what you are calling in through doing this is going to increase the quality of your life. So Brenda, thank you for sharing. I know you talked for a lot. I know you gave an example that is true probably for a lot of people in a lot of different ways. And I hope that's really helpful to you. I saw that we have 2 hands in the room over here, Joseph, so we can go to Shauna and then we'll come over here to Jeff, right? So we have 2 hands in the room.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Something very bad happened recently to somebody I care about a lot, and the consequence of what they found out could be acted out over the next 30 days. And it's not my thing, but it's a person very dear to me. And so I have gotten to practice dealing with fear for this person. And I found out about 2 weeks ago. And so it's been a daily practice of, facing what I feel and going back to my belief system and staying in my belief system. This person is very captured by fear right now. But I'm believing that we are all one and that I can do my work for not only myself, but for this person. But yesterday I realized that the sadness I'm carrying for this person, that below it was a lot of anger. And so yesterday I took some time because I felt it in my body. I felt it just carrying around my heart and around my gut. Mm-hmm. And so yesterday afternoon I just sat down and just let myself in a journal form rage about it. Mm-hmm. Because I knew it was carrying it was blocking the good that I want to receive for all of us. Yeah. And it really helped. But I think I'm going to have to do it a lot more to continue to be open to the fact that because this fact has happened doesn't mean that has to be what happens next.
Right. Beautiful, Shauna. Thank you for sharing that. And I'm so sorry. Sorry for your friend, and I'm sorry that it's weighing so heavily.
But I do know it's practice because I have to keep reminding myself this is their journey. Yeah. It's not my journey. Right. And how can I be present with them and stay out of my fear for them? But it's hard when you love somebody.
It is hard. It's very hard, and you have described what I would say is the journey and the practice that we have to do, right? Recognizing that other people's journey are not their own. And part of what I do when I'm faced with that, with my granddaughters, with my son, with people that I really love, is that I have to remember that is their journey, and that the universe is supporting them whether I can see it or not. And that they are in partnership with the universe just the way that I have been in partnership, even through really, really, really dark times in my own life. And so I have to trust that, and I lean into that. And so when I'm doing my spiritual work around them, that's my spiritual work. That's what I'm leaning into. Spirit is just as present for them as it has ever been for me. It is just as available. It is just on as much on their side as it has ever been for me. And I cling to that trust, right? And you say something equally as important. I think it's a little bit of what Brenda's facing too, is that we have to have safe places in which we can simply experience our feelings. We're not trying to deny that we're afraid or angry or upset about things. right? What we want to do is not get caught in the story of them. And so we find ways, journaling, trusted people, right? I have 2 or 3 people that I know that when I go to them and I want to just rage or I want to just be really sloppy and say all my judgments and criticisms about something or someone, I want to be able to say that to somebody who isn't going to jump in the hole with me. I don't want them to tell me I'm wrong. What I don't want them to do is jump in the mud with me. I just want them to hold the space that's safe for me to say those things so that I can get to the other side of it where I'm now practicing trust and whatever needs to be practiced. And so thank you for sharing that. That's really important to be able to feel our feelings around it. What we want to do is to feel them, express them, and not get caught in them and not have them start the story. Oh my God, this thing that I am afraid of is inevitable and it's awful and horrible and there isn't anything I can do about it, right? That's where we then get caught.
I put a 20-minute clock on it.
Good for you, a 20-minute clock. There you go, right? And the most powerful thing we can do for other people is to believe that they too are part of the oneness, and that the universe has never abandoned them, and that opening is always present, it's always there, and they are on their journey. And to really lean into that trust. Actually, as I said, sometimes I just cling to it. It's the anchor. It's the anchor in all of the waves of emotions. Thank you, Shauna. Okay, last comment we had here with Jeff.
Yeah. Hi, I'm Jeff.
Hi, Jeff.
Yeah, I have a lot of experience with fear, and I have a lot of experience with anger. And frankly, I've earned the right to feel fear. I've earned the right to feel angry, as a lot of us have.
As everyone has.
Yeah, as everyone has. And, fear of abandonment, fear of being criticized, fear of failure, fear of getting hurt. I think for me that's really the key, is the ability, having the ability and the safety and the support of being able to express the anger. I remember staffing a weekend, a Mankind Project weekend years ago, and one of the men who was attending the weekend, the first process is accountability. And the man stood up, and the leader was saying, getting it that this man was angry. And he asked this man, and I'm going to get choked up because this applies to me. He says, have you ever been allowed to be to share your rage as rageful as you want to be? Have you ever been allowed to be as angry as you want to be? And the man started crying. Mm-hmm. And he says, no. And the leader says, well, your anger and your rage is welcome here. And for me, I've done a lot of work around that, so I've got a lot of that out, and I've done the healing work, the grief work underneath the anger. And now for me, it's a matter of going unconscious, where the habit comes in.
Right.
If I'm unconscious and I get triggered, all of a sudden I go to the default of, poor me, I'm not going to get hurt again, no one's going to do this to me again, and sometimes the anger pops up.
Right.
But as soon as I become conscious, like, well, I've done this work, I know better now.
Yes.
I had a lot of support in the past. I'm just continuing to get a lot of support, and I'm not that anymore.
Yes.
I have no reason, so I choose not to fall into that habit and slide backwards.
Beautiful. Beautiful. Thank you, Jeff. And, I'd really want to acknowledge that work. It's hard work. It's hard work to do, right? Which is why in the Science of Mind we support all other kinds of engagements, right? We support medicine, we support therapy, we support all that work because it's at different levels that we do that work, right? And the work with our feelings is work that we do in safe environments with people who know how to help us through it, facilitated, who don't jump in the hole, that aren't afraid of our anger or our grief or our rage, but can be in that container and recognize that that's not the truth of our being, but it is the feelings that we're having at that moment. And what teaches us too, is that we don't have to be afraid of those feelings. We can let them up and out, we can behave appropriately with them, right? We can let them out appropriately. And then we can move into the spiritual realm, which is then to set that place of trust, intention. That's not who I want to be. That's not how I want to behave. That's not how I want to support this situation. I'll never forget when a dear friend of mine said many, many years ago over a really, really, really challenging situation in family life, deep disappointment, lots of long-term challenges that was, I mean, anger and rage on the part of this person, lots of spiritual work, and I remember when this person said, I realize that nothing will ever change in how I'm viewing the situation unless I give up my right to be angry. Because that was holding it in place. But that's a spiritual answer, not a psychological answer. And he had done enough work to move through all of that he was able to say, I don't want to live my life from that anger anymore. And that doesn't mean that anger doesn't appear, but it's no longer habitual, that habitual way in which we walk around in the world. And this is why spirituality is a grown-up work. There are nuances and there are paradoxes, and each one of us are in a different place with how we're dealing with our past and our current situation, with the psychological work we have to do and the spiritual work we decide we want to do. And every one of us is doing that a little bit differently, which is why we're in community together, so we can support each other and create those safe spaces. Yes, and the anger's not getting in the way of your life anymore, right? Because you now know what to do with it and where to go with it and who you actually want to be. I mean, it's beautiful, Jeff. And this is another reason why we take classes. This is why we're in community together, because this is a practice. And over time, we learn to practice and find a new way. All right, thank you for joining us this morning, and we are going to have a fabulous celebration here if you're watching this on a Sunday, and Reverend Karen's going to be carrying on with Accepting Our Good. It's very, very fabulous, and we're so happy to be with you, and we will see you next week, 9:15 Central Time. Bye for now.